Hello, everyone. Welcome back to I See What You're Saying, the Disciplined Listening Podcast. I'm Michael Reddington, and today it is my pleasure to welcome our next guest, Dr. Laura Sicola. Dr. Sicola is a cognitive linguist and executive communication coach. She guides leaders into mastering communication and their executive presence. Of particular interest, she helps leaders and executives close the gap between what you think you said and what your audience heard. And I'm really excited to have this conversation with her today as we dive into her experience, her techniques, and how we can apply it in all of our high impact conversations as well. So we're going to get into the topic of many topics. We're going to start with talking about how we can translate our expertise so others can understand, which is often a much more difficult process than we care to stop and think through. She's going to talk about, in related news, how to break the expert curse. Again, often we don't stop to think how our own expertise impedes our ability to listen and communicate successfully with others. She's going to talk about why we try to sound smart, why that's always not such a good thing, as well as the power of analogies, metaphors, and so much more. This is a wall-to-wall, action-packed, knowledge-filled conversation, and I really am excited to share it with everybody today. While you're here with us today, please just take a moment. We'd appreciate it if you could subscribe to the show, like the show, share it with your network, leave us your feedback. We really do appreciate it. Thank you. And of course, take a quick moment while you're online to visit our sponsors. You can check out humantel.com, enter the code Inquasive25 for 25% off their best-in-class online training to accurately interpret when people's emotions are changing by, again, accurately recognizing shifts in their facial expressions and nonverbal communication. Please also check out the International Association of Interviewers at certifiedinterviewer.com. That's where you can learn all you need to know about membership requirements and opportunities at the national level and the local chapter level. It's also where you can get all your questions answered about the Certified Forensic Interviewer designation, how to apply, how to earn, and how to leverage the designation, and more. Finally, while you're online today, please check out Inquasive.com. That's where you can learn more about the programs our clients ask us to custom facilitate for their senior leaders, sales teams, HR teams, negotiation teams, and more as we teach them how to uncover hidden value in all of their high impact conversations. We really appreciate you being here for another week. Thank you so very much. So now without further ado, I introduce to you Dr. Laura Sicola. Hello, Laura. It is so great to meet you. How are you today?
I am doing great, Michael. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Oh, thank you for accepting the invitation. I am really excited for this conversation. And doing my prep work for this, I probably came up with no less than 3.5 hours worth of questions and topics to talk to you about, which I know neither of us have time for. And everyone just said, what? We won't go that long, I promise. But I really am excited to learn from you today. So thank you for being here. And when I was going through your material, one of the things that caught my eye, because I run into it too. I mean, we all run into it, but something that I feel like I've had such vivid experience as well is how you work with senior leaders and business owners and many other people to help them translate their expertise so other people can actually understand it and they sound interesting in the process. And I might be misquoting you here, but we don't end up sounding like a human spreadsheet, which is probably never fun. So to start the conversation, in whatever direction you want to take it, can you please walk us through your process for translating our expertise so it lands the way we need it to with our audience?
That's such a great place to begin, Michael, because it is one of the most common pitfalls that most people, leaders or otherwise, have when they're trying to prove a point, at least in the workplace. And it's because we fall into what I like to call the expert's curse. And that simple concept, the expert's curse, is that you've been doing what you do for so long and you're so good at it that you forget what everybody else doesn't already know, doesn't need to know, cares or doesn't care about, may or may not already understand. So we go into our zone and then we lose them. And either we just keep going through all the details because we think it's interesting to us, it's relevant to us, not knowing that we just dusted them. We lost them on sentence number 2, or either way over their head or way down in the weeds. And sometimes we get stuck because we're a little bit nervous and we're afraid somebody's going to shoot us down, or we're going to get challenged in a way that we don't feel comfortable. Maybe we just don't like public speaking or having to do presentations to an important client or to the senior leadership team or the board. So what do? In order to compensate for those nerves, our lizard brain, our fight or flight reflex kicks in. And the way that shows up is we try to sound smart. And it's because that's our protective defense mechanism. And trying to sound smart means fire hose, right? Open mouth, turn on fire hose, drown the other person in data, hoping that either there's nothing left for them to ask a question about, or they'll just see how much work we've done and assume that we must know a lot, and so they should just give us the benefit of the doubt. The problem is, what ends up happening in the end is that the only thing the other person takes away from that conversation is, gee, I guess Michael's really smart. They didn't learn anything else other than that, but it's still not enough to convince them to do your bidding, to just follow your lead. You have to bring them along. The most counterintuitive piece of advice I can share is that the best way to make someone think that you're smart is to make them feel smart by making your argument as clean, concise, simple, down to earth, applicable as possible so that they just inherently get it. They don't need to think about it, process it, carry the one, do the long division. They just instinctively get it. That's when they follow.
All great points. I think I wrote down 9/10 of everything that you just said because it was so spot on. And it can be hard for people with deep expertise to keep things simple.
Yes.
Because we often, and you said it, we fall in love with whatever we know, whatever we do, whatever we're passionate about. And people don't always recognize that passion can be a double-edged sword.
Yes.
It can be great and it can ruin things all at the same time if we're not really careful. Yes. So do you have a particular process that you work through with people to help them simplify their message or make their message more target applicable? Like, how is the other person going to apply this?
There's a lot of things that we do. I have an entire workshop, a day program for teams called Breaking the Expert's Curse. And it's got all these tactics. And part of it is, number one, helping you realize where the natural default way that you might want to explain something is not as interesting and exciting to you as it is to them, and helping you see that, right? Because there's a difference between the movie in our minds as we're playing it out and the movie that comes out of our mouths, the movie that everybody else gets to watch. And just as point of example, have you ever just taken your phone and like made a birthday video or a little quick message to somebody else with some friends, and then you watch it 30 seconds later and you're like, wow, that sounded better in my head, or, oh my gosh, I'm such a dork, or, whatever else comes out. It's like, why are you surprised? Because you were there when it happened. You're the one who hit the record button, and it was all of 30 seconds ago, and yet you're surprised because you sounded stilted, or you sounded dorkier, or you sounded extra. And a lot of people, when they go technical, they don't realize that they sound boring. They love their content. The content to them is interesting. Their delivery goes and just kind of flat lines on the energy level. So we need to figure out a way to connect the biggest gap in the world, which is the 3 inches between your brain and your mouth. Because everything sounds great up in the first stage. It needs to come out the same. So I think one of the places we need to start is recognizing things like simplifying it in a way that is digestible and relatable, and either for a universal audience or tailored to your specific audience, is not the same as dumbing it down.
Thank you.
Right? That's the important piece. And once you realize that it's actually harder to give a simple explanation than to give a very detailed and technical explanation, that's the biggest hurdle to overcome. Everything else smooths out after that. I think that's why Twain said, I would have written you a short letter. Excuse me, I didn't have time to write you a short letter, so I wrote you a long one instead.
Makes sense.
So can you do that? That's the key.
And it's far more challenging, I think, than people understand or would guess. And I am 100% guilty of what you're describing. I've done it many times. Thankfully, I have a young son now who can tell me I'm being a dork and I don't have to worry about seeing it on video later. So that part of the process is quicker, at least on my end these days. But when you talk about the gap between our brain and our mouth, I feel like that sets up another gap, which is what I feel like I said and what you feel like you heard.
Yes.
Those are two, I guess one gap sets up the other. They're both difficult to close.
Mm.
How do we help closing that? How do we help to close that second gap between what I swear I said and what you swear you heard?
Both are, of course, fallible, to say the least, because what you swear you said may not be what you said literally or in content or in the delivery. It's often the difference between maybe what you said and how you said it. That could be the issue. You know, you think that you're giving someone some constructive feedback and they feel totally crushed when they're done. And okay, why? What is it? Well, we need to think about certain things like, how did we deliver it? How did we couch it? What vocabulary did we use? What was our tone of voice? Facial expressions, body language, all of those details really color it. You know, the difference between nice haircut and nice haircut. The two phrases are identical on paper, but the delivery has a huge connotation of interpretation differences. And being able to then think in terms of, okay, well, who is the person I'm speaking to? What is their frame of reference? Are they from just give it to me straight, I can handle it, no sugarcoating, I just want to know, give me the bumper sticker and then get out of my office and let me take care of it? Or are they super cautiously people pleasers, relationship is paramount, and, you know, gotta make sure that no feathers are ruffled, no feelings are hurt, no toes are trampled before we worry about what the actual content of the message is, because they're going to expect that from you as well. So the same message can get even delivered identically. They can watch the same literal video. Two people will interpret it very different. So you do need to adjust based on the lens of the recipient. Everybody wears different colored glasses.
Yeah, and it's the second time, at least the second time you brought it up, and I feel like that really is so important. But now we're juggling chainsaws. You know, on one side, I've got all of these things going on inside me that I have to deal with, and then I've got to figure out the other person's perspective and frame of mind and history and how, what lens might they be looking at this through. And all of this, I feel like, increases our stress level potentially. And then when we're under stress, we go to what we know. Yes. Which then can cause us to continue to just rant on about our expertise. And so we can almost inadvertently put ourselves on this cycle, vicious cycle. There, I finally found those words, this vicious cycle that's working against us instead of working for us. So how do you work with leaders in order to turn what could be a stressful situation into one that they can build confidence through?
Part of the question is, okay, what's creating the stress? Is it where it's coming at you, or you're trying not to create the stress for somebody else? Is it preventive measures that you're taking, or is it reactive because something went wrong and now you have to address it? I think where a lot of people get stuck, I'll hear sometimes, you know, I'll start working through a situation with someone and they'll go, oh, it takes so much time to think about all these steps that we're working through. You know, I don't have time to do this for every conversation. And I'll just say to them, okay, well, if you don't have time to do it right, when will you have time to do it over? Because if you just go in there and grenade throw your comment into the conversation because it's the knee-jerk reaction, it's your default, it's just what you want to say. Okay, but you better be ready for the fallout that may occur if it doesn't land the way that you intended. Then you got a mess to clean up. And that takes much, much longer to clean up. And it may never fully clean up if there's scar tissue that forms out of that wound, whether it's a paper cut or, you know, a gaping hole. That's going to have repercussions long-term potentially. So perhaps you should rethink the importance of the, 15 to 20 minutes that I'm asking you to reconsider and how you prepare for that conversation.
That was a great line. Do it right or do it over. And you're 100% right. When we do it over, we've now made the situation potentially infinitely more difficult for ourselves,
Yep.
created many, many new problems to solve that we didn't have if we would have just done it right the first time. And I do agree with you that so many people don't want to invest the time. Maybe they just feel like they don't have time in general, and that's a whole nother conversation. But they don't want to invest the time in something stressful because it is uncomfortable. I have to think through these things. I have to anticipate. I don't want to spend energy into something that I already don't like. I just want the thing I don't like to
Yeah.
go away.
Right.
But a good
How's that work for you
plan,
normally?
yeah, not well. Like,
Those
a
things
good
don't tend to just like fix themselves. If anything, they just fester.
Yes, yes. I'm trying not to tell too many personal stories of examples that would
Go for
actually
it.
completely substantiate what you're just talking about in my
Be my
personal
guest.
life. I'm
Yes,
going
I
to
mean,
say,
and honestly, well, Michael, I'm glad you said that because yes, I'm an executive coach. Yes, I tend to work with leaders in Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies, whatever. But the point is exactly what you just said, that everything that I teach, train, coach is 100% as applicable in your personal life as in your professional life. Why? Because they're people. So the question is never, do the rules apply? They always apply. The question is, how do they apply? And how do we need to adjust accordingly? So once people stop thinking about, well, that doesn't matter because it's this. Oh, yes, it does. It's like saying gravity. Well, gravity doesn't apply on the moon like it does on Earth. Well, gravity still is gravity. The number might be different in the calculation, but it's still there, 100%.
it's a great point. And if we understand the goal we're trying to achieve, who we're trying to achieve it with in the context of the situation, then everything you're talking about slots in. You know,
Yes.
what's the right way to prepare and go through this conversation so we're more likely to get the outcomes we want to achieve without creating additional problems along the way. And when we talk about having what we say land the way we intend, a lot of times, I mean, you mentioned what's our word choice, what's our body language, facial expressions, the other person experiencing. But to distill one factor out of that can be, how do we tell the story? Because
Mhm.
even just how we present the narrative can have a huge impact on how it's perceived, the way it lands, and what happens next. I know you work with individuals on developing their ability to tell a persuasive narrative, a compelling
Yeah.
narrative to help get their point across. When you do that, what are some of your most valuable steps or processes for making sure we're delivering compelling narratives that land the way they should?
I find one of the easiest things to do is number one, don't overthink the concept of a narrative. People are like, oh, storytelling. I'm so tired of hearing about storytelling. I'm not a storyteller. I don't have time to go into the drama of writing a whole novel. No, let's back up. Let's boil it down and simplify. Start with something like an analogy or a metaphor. We use them all the time in natural conversation. One sentence, two sentences. It doesn't need to be complicated. I had a client who was in HR, head of a relatively large department for a gigantic corporation. And one of the initiatives that they were doing was that every week, the head of one department within HR would do a lunch and learn for the other departments. And the idea was simply to say, here's what my team does. In case you don't know, because there are so many of us, even though we're in the same company, in the same general vertical. But she's like, ours, I mean, it's so complicated. We actually have 5 major pillars of things that we are required to do, and they're all technical. And it's just, I feel like I'm bored even explaining it to someone because there's not a simple way to explain it. I don't want to bore them with this. And so I said, well, let's figure out what's something that you could map this onto that's an experience everyone else has that they can connect to easily. And what we came up with was the idea of buying a house. If you're going to buy a house, you've got 5 big picture. We came up with 5 stages of it. So 1, you got to look at your budget. Number 2, you got to identify what neighborhoods, what kind of inventory there is that works with that budget. Number 3, you have to find the mortgage broker. Then there's the insurance, and then there's whatever else it is. So once you found those 5 very easy to identify stages, and you get people nodding, going, "Okay, yeah, I got that." You don't have to think about those, right? You don't have to try to process. Oh, a mortgage. What's a mortgage? No, everybody knows what that stage is. So once you got that, then you can say, okay. So imagine you're buying a house in this space. with us at work, you're trying to do X. Here's where the mortgage part comes in. Here's where the stage of identifying inventory in the market. Here's the stage of, so we are your realtor. We're your broker when you're looking to do this for your client. And it was like, oh, bam, there it is. So then you can get as technical as you want because people already have a construct. Analogies and metaphors are incredibly valuable ways to open because, and the way the brain works with language is that we process technical explanations on like literal, okay, I have to think about the words and match the meanings and process these things, and it takes time. But an analogy, it speaks to the unconscious. The explanation speaks to the conscious mind. The analogy speaks to the unconscious mind, and it doesn't need to think. It just reacts. It just gets it. It is instantaneous. So as soon as you can get that instantaneous bang of comprehension, then you have a whole different platform onto which to map your explanation because everyone already understands the fundamental point that you're trying to make. So that'll get you infinitely faster, infinitely farther.
Again, all great points. A story doesn't have to be super long.
Mm-mm.
Just a couple sentences will do the trick, or narrative. Analogies and metaphors, powerful. I love the way that you spoke to the unconscious mind versus the conscious mind. I just know it, I just get it, versus I have to do the math and figure it out. It's a great explanation. But you talked about the power of language and how it's processed. So I'd love to come back to storytelling at some point. We'll see if I can remember to. But one of the things that fascinated me about getting to know you and having a conversation with you was the fact that you're a cognitive linguist. Mm-hmm. So could you help me understand what a cognitive...
What does that mean?
Yeah. And I hate asking questions. I shouldn't have asked help me understand because I feel like that can come across like parental sometimes. I didn't mean that. But can you bring me up to speed on what a cognitive linguist does and how is that informed the way that you communicate?
So cognitive linguistics, like anything else, is a pretty wide field. But big picture for me is trying to understand very much what you identified earlier, which is number one, what creates the gap between what you think you said and what they think they heard. If you look at it as far as really how is language processed in the brain, and what is it about what you say and how you say it that makes that message either go in one ear and come out the other, or go in and stick. And if it sticks, what does it do? And how do you ensure that it does something that you want it to do, as opposed to something completely different? So looking at how those things are processed, what is conscious and unconscious, what is literal and figurative, what resonates with others, where does sound come into play, all those other factors, it's an infinite list of possibilities, but helping people to identify the ones that are going to make the greatest gains and going to have the biggest impact. That's my goal.
And thank you, because you explained that in a way that made entire sense. So I appreciate
Yay. Okay.
I appreciate that. So I'm sure you've already listed some of the techniques that can have the biggest gains. You're speaking to the unconscious mind, using the analogy and the metaphor. You just mentioned sound. So even like the tone of voice that we use, different things for different messages. But as you were earning your PhD, what were some of the highest impact techniques or methods that we can use in order to take advantage of how the brain processes language?
The easiest thing I think that everyone can do is it's a lesson that is very fast and not pleasant in the moment as you're doing it. But if you're willing to just sort of rip off the Band-Aid, you'll get so much more value out of it. And very simply, it's take your phone. And when you're on a Teams meeting or a Zoom meeting with somebody, just turn on your video camera and prop up your phone against the bottom of your monitor, not where anybody else is going to see it. You're not recording them. You don't care. You're just going to record yourself for 1 minute, 60 seconds. That's all we're talking about. As you're explaining whatever point, opening the agenda, presenting, bullet point 7 to bullet point 9, and then hit stop. When you're done, go back and watch it for yourself and ask yourself, A, is that what you expected to see and hear? And where's the gap between what you thought you did and what you actually saw and heard? And then the second question that I would ask is, what did you want to leave them with? What impression did you want to make? If you had to, and this is a hard exercise for some people, if you were to put down 2 to 3 personal qualities, adjectives, nouns, things like confident, approachable, knowledgeable, empathetic, relatable, any 2 to 3 qualities that you wanted that audience to recognize in you, just for them to come to that assessment for themselves, that deduction. Okay, write them down and then go back and watch that video again and say, if you didn't know that person from Adam or Eve, would you have said, wow, that person seems really empathetic and knowledgeable and confident? And if not, why? Then reverse engineer that video and look for the evidence, the very 100% objective behaviors that you saw and heard in that video that contributed to that gut level subjective sense that that person didn't sound very confident. Because all those terms, confident, empathetic, blah, 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 those are all subjective interpretations of your objective speech behaviors. That's a really big key. All of those qualities, I'll say it again, are subjective interpretations of your objective speech behaviors. So something as simple as, how quickly did I talk? I talked at, you may think it's fast, I may think it's slow, but it was at whatever pace it was at. I got in X number of words per minute. How did that land for that particular topic, audience, etc.? Might I need to slow it down or speed it up? That's up to you, but the speed was the speed was the speed. That is objective. Then we got to look and see how did that play in the results that we got. Let me pause there.
Another great explanation. And it gets me thinking about all kinds of conversations that I've been in and trying to reflect on those. I do want to double down on your idea of videotaping yourself. I couldn't recommend it anymore. There were several organizations I worked with in my career where we audio video recorded our interrogations. Mm-hmm. And I would leave that interrogation thinking that I did a masterful job. And I would bring the written statement back with me, and I'd bring the videotape of what I did and the additional evidence that might have been recovered. And then I would sit down next to my bosses and we would watch the video together, and I would leave with my self-esteem in a paper bag. Because they would be able to point out, and after a while I could see them too, but they would point out all of the things, the little mistakes, the misjudgments, the missed opportunities, and they would ask me, what were you trying to do here? What was your thought process here? What I told them I was trying to do and what actually happened were 2 entirely different things. So video is an unforgiving medium to learn from. And to your point, if you're willing to go through that process, it is the arc of your growth can change quickly if you're willing to go through it.
I tell my clients all the time 2 things. Number 1, the video camera is like your best friend who has no filter whatsoever. No tact, no diplomacy. They're just going to lay it out for you 100% because they love you enough to tell you the truth. And I can't coach you until you see and hear what I see and hear. Otherwise, we're comparing apples and oranges because you know what you meant and I know what you did, and they are not the same thing. So if you don't see that, then you naturally go into deny and defend mode and say, well, but okay, Laura, you didn't understand because, you're not a finance, IT, whatever expert. And see the people, but I was really trying to do this. And my intent was just to do this. So that's why you don't understand, Laura. Oh yeah, watch the video. Oh, okay. It makes my job much easier because we can just jump to the solution as opposed to trying to identify and argue about what the problem is.
Yes. And what's very interesting in that explanation or that example is that if we break it down, I would bet that most of the time we find ourselves, not you and I, but like leaders, people in industry, whatever it is, most of the time people find themselves having to talk to others who don't know what they know, who don't have their expertise, who don't have the same interests. Yep. So to say, well, you don't understand because you're not me. Well, everybody you talk to isn't you. Maybe there's a few people on your team that are right there. Maybe there's some shared experiences with somebody that you work with. But for the most part, everybody you work with is not you. So to some degree, you represent the perfect audience because you don't have that knowledge, that expertise.
Yep.
I feel like often, and correct me on this, please, whether it's personal that you mentioned or professional that we've been talking about, if we are speaking to somebody, a significant majority of the time is because we want to influence them in some way.
Yes,
how they think, what they feel, how they act. Like that's a general motivation for why we engage in a lot of our conversations. And to circle back for a second, if we don't translate our expertise properly, we're going to lose them. We're not going to influence them. But if we step aside from expertise for a moment, if we're really speaking to influence somebody, besides all the great ideas you've already shared, understanding their lens and where they're coming from and being more compelling and focusing on how a story lands, all of these things, what are your core tenets of, to quote the name of your book, speaking to influence others?
There are many. When we talk about things like executive presence in business or in at work, at least, and it really goes personal as well, as I mentioned, leadership is an image, regardless of your role, right? You can be an intern in the mailroom and be recognized as a true leader that people would trust and would follow, and you can be the CEO and not have that, in which case you're just the boss. There's a difference. And a big part of that leadership image is based on credibility as the cornerstone. And credibility in speech is in great part created when you have congruence or alignment between your words, your voice, and your body language, the verbal, vocal, and visual. And where we tend to get ourselves in trouble is not realizing that our expertise alone is not enough. At best, that is the words. That's the what you say, your verbal channel. And they're not always well-chosen words for that matter. As we mentioned before, too technical. We need some story or analogy or something to help me digest it all. And when what you say doesn't match how you say it, that's where it sounds like, well, do you believe what you're saying? Do you really mean what you're saying? And it creates doubt in the mind of the listener. So it can be something as simple as, no, it's fine. No, I'm not mad. In which case you're going, okay. Or someone is up there and they're trying to make a pitch, but their voice is shaking and they're stammering and they're saying a million fillers and likes. And they're playing with their hair or their facial hair and they're fidgeting a lot and they look and sound like they want to jump out of their own skin and dive under the table. Okay, so I hear you saying that we should take your recommendation, but you sound like it terrifies you. You don't sound very confident. So if you don't sound confident in what you're suggesting, how am I supposed to be confident in what you're suggesting? There's a credibility gap. So that's where the importance of aligning and making sure that your message content and delivery are all congruent. That is the foundation. If you can master that art in something as simple as dinner conversation, that is something then that you can apply anywhere and it will take you very, very far.
Yes. And I love how you mentioned even working on it in a dinner conversation, because when we're talking about communication, there are potentially infinite opportunities to practice. And if we only look at it as this is my personal life, this is my social life, this is my work life, this is a hobby, well, we can practice skills across all of those that impact our ability to speak, listen, communicate in all of these environments. I feel like confidence can be such a fickle thing.
Yeah.
Just speak to myself. There are contexts that I'm like humbly very confident in. There are other circumstances where I don't really feel that confident at all. And some of them are kind of congruent. Like they're not on opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yep.
I would guess that many of the leaders you work with probably have lots of areas where they're confident.
Sure.
but some where they're not. How do you help leaders learn to either translate that confidence or build true, because it's hard to fake being confident for more than a few sentences. So how do you help them build that confidence so they can demonstrate that alignment?
So there's a number of things. Some of it is mindset, and some of it is just more active self-awareness. So, for example, you might be confident in what you're doing, but now you have to give a presentation to the senior leadership team. You're going to be nervous the entire time. It's not that you don't feel generally confident in the analysis that you did and the recommendations that you're going to give, but there's just a lot riding on this, so your adrenaline is kicking and your panic mode is there. Okay. You may or may not be able to fully control that, but you can be aware of what you're telegraphing, right? I mean, if you're in a boxing ring, you're not going to wind up, pull your arm way back before you throw the punch. They'll see that it's coming. They're going to deflect, block, do whatever it's going to be. Not that you're trying to throw a punch here, but the point is you don't need to telegraph your punch, nor do you want to telegraph your nerves. I mean, there's no reason that if I'm nervous that I would start the introduction by saying, hello, everybody. Thank you for meeting me today, inviting me to speak to you. I just want you to know I'm really nervous because you all really intimidate me. And okay, let's go to page 1. Like, why would I say that? Is there any reason that you would verbally just blurt that out? No, that's called grenading your own presentation before you even start. It's not about authenticity and inauthenticity. We can get into that whole ball of wax in a few minutes. But if there's no reason why you'd say, well, you are nervous, so it would be inauthentic if you don't confess it. No, that's TMI. Keep your mouth shut. Make your point. There's a need to know basis, and that little detail is not in the need to know list. So similarly, if you wouldn't verbally state it, then you don't need to project it. That's just an objective, controllable behavior. Watch your fillers. Don't say all the time. If you know when you're nervous, you tend to play with a pen, or you play with your hair, or play with your face, or look around a lot. Okay, keep your hands in your lap. Work on not saying every third word. There are many simple objective behaviors that you can learn to control so that you don't reflexively telegraph your nerves. So eventually, as you start to be better at that, that will engender confidence in you naturally, especially when you see that they respond to you well. So it's a self-perpetuating cycle of confidence, even if you don't necessarily feel it from the beginning. It's not a fake it till you make it kind of a thing. It's a can you control your behaviors? That's when you set your own path.
And if we set ourselves up for success, whether it's by a little bit of preparation, whether it is by sometimes, honestly, where we stand, where we sit, how we dress, what's on the table,
yes,
maybe even who we have around us, who do we sit next to, all those kinds of, maybe you don't drink. Maybe don't, I don't really drink caffeine anyway, but maybe don't drink a whole bunch of caffeine right before you have to give a presentation that makes you nervous, because that's just going to send you off into jitterland, and it's not going to be helpful. So all of these things are important considerations where I'm in 100% agreement, where I feel like we can manifest our own confidence, if that's the right way to say it.
Yes.
We can create the context, where our confidence just develops.
Yes.
And I do love your point about, if you play with pens, don't have one in front of you, these kinds of things. Decisions we can make if we're willing to get back to something you said before, to put in the time ahead and think through how valuable this is. A weird shared experience-ish. I used to laugh when I would teach interrogation and people would say, well, if they have a pen, I make them put it down. If they're chewing gum, I make them spit it out. If they hold a cup, I make them throw it away. I'm like, why would you do that?
Yeah, right. That's oh my gosh.
Another way for their behavior to leak out. That's an observation tool that you're taking away.
Speaking to you through it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's disrespectful. Okay. So now we need to go for a long walk and start talking about resetting our entire perception of this conversation.
Yes.
If we can create the context. You mentioned authenticity, and I think that I would probably be preaching to the choir here. So I want to circle back to that real quick, where this whole what's the word I'm looking for? Rigid perspective of authenticity. You have to be the same person all the time. you can be the same person and adjust for the audience, adjust for the
Yes.
situation, adjust for the outcome, make good situationally aware decisions based on what you're looking to achieve. That's not called being inauthentic. That calls being self-aware, situationally aware, contextually aware. How important is it to develop that awareness and not just rationalize bad behavior by saying, well, this is who I am, so this is who I'm going to be.
And whatever that role you're in now is the role you're going to be in for the rest of your life.
At best.
Yes, that is where you will plateau, cap yourself, etc. So where we get in trouble is the misbelief that authenticity is a finite construct, that it is black and white. This is me. That's not me. Here's my box. Here's your box. Here's the rest of the world. But I like my box. Don't make me come out of it. To me, rather than black and white thinking, we have that full spectrum of colors available to us. And it's what I refer to as your prismatic voice. So the same way that you've probably seen those little sun catchers, those little crystal-y things hanging from somebody's rearview mirror or from the kitchen window, the sun hits it and you see a little rainbow come out the other side. In that same way, here's my analogy for the day. You are that white light. In you are all of those colors. You mentioned you've got a young kid at home. How old is your son?
He's 8.
He's 8. And would it be fair to say that at least at different times, you talk to him a little bit differently than when you're leading this podcast?
Yes.
Okay. Can you give a couple of examples of what you might do a little differently, whether you're happy daddy mode, not so happy daddy mode, or whatever else?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, and this drives him nuts. I try to talk to him like an adult as much as I can. Like, I try not to talk down to him, but there's times where I need to be like far more supportive. Like, hey, buddy, get your breath right. Let's think this through. We can do this. Times where I need to instill much more confidence. Like, no, you've done it before. Here's how you can do it again. And there might be times where I do need to be more of a disciplinarian. That might not be the best way to say it because I don't walk around threatening consequences all the time. But yeah, you're going to brush your teeth. Like, this isn't up for negotiation. And I'm pretty sure my podcast episodes will be pretty short if I talk to people that way.
Right. And I'm also betting that, are you a sports fan?
I am.
What's your favorite team?
Red Sox, unfortunately.
Okay. So, my condolences. When the ump makes a bad call against them and you're at a bar with some of your friends, do you have some slightly choice language and perhaps volume and styles that you also might not use on this podcast?
Those who know me are probably very interested in how I might answer that question. Yes.
So a few letters, a few extra words that only need 4 letters occasionally.
Yeah, I know you're a cognitive linguist, but one of the things I've been surprised with in my life is how many phrases can artistically rhyme with duck if you just put a little bit of thought into it.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so now we've got the rabid sports fan part of you and the daddy who can be loving and probably funny and goofy. Dorky, as I believe we had officially identified earlier. Okay.
No doubt.
Wear that with pride, and the disciplinarian. And then there's the podcast host who talks to professionals, who's bringing this important leadership, professional success show to light. And all of those are different colors as part of your spectrum, but they're all you, right? It's not like one is the authentic you and the others are fake. Is that fair?
Fair.
Okay. So authenticity for you is contextually dictated. It's about which color in your spectrum needs to shine most brightly to be appropriate for this audience, to have that person hear the message and receive the message in a way that they can hear what you need them to hear. It would be authentic, but far less effective for you to take rabid sports fan angry at bad ump call to discipline your child when he's, fussing about not brushing his teeth before bed. Would that be fair?
Yeah, that wouldn't end well for anybody.
That's a great way to put it. So all of this is all authentic. Now, you also have preferences. And when we talk about, okay, yes, I'm a direct straight shooter. I don't pussyfoot. I don't whatever. You know what? That might be my default setting. But I can be diplomatic. I can be sensitive and be gentle and be whatever else. It's not my preferred approach. It's not my default approach, but it's not inauthentic for me to do so. Authenticity is, I want to know that I understood their needs, they understood my point, and we got to the point where we needed to get. So if I need to adjust to use their preferred communication style to achieve that outcome, it's not me being inauthentic. It's me being smart, contextually savvy, and potentially diplomatic. But that's still very much me and very much authentic. So we got to get out of our own head about preferences and comfort zone being synonymous with authenticity. If you put those all in the same box, you will limit your success, period.
Thank you. I appreciate all of that. You mentioned as towards the end there, having a conversation where you say your piece and you're heard and they say their piece and they're heard.
Yep.
You talked about that in the end. And before we hit the go button on this, you talked about you have your own listening protocol that speaks to that.
Yep.
So could you walk us through, maybe not step for step, but
Sure.
some of the highlights of your personal protocol to make sure that even if we're upset, if there's conflict, if there's something going on, that we do engage with people in a way where they can feel like not only were they heard, but they had a chance to respond to us
Yep.
as well?
So in my book, Speaking to Influence, chapter 8 is about listening to understand specifically, the whole chapter on it. Excuse me. There's a worksheet, and I'm very happy to share a link for your audience, for your listeners, if they would just like to download the worksheet itself. It'd be my gift to them. Be happy to, and I would love to hear any sort of feedback that people got from using it. And it's a one-page protocol, very simple, to ensure that two people who have very different perspectives on something can have a conversation about it and ensure that both people get to finish their sentences, get to complete their points, are heard, and they get the feedback that indicates that their content and intent was accurately received, maybe not agreed with, but accurately received, and they will get some validation for their intention or their principle or their effort or something along the way. And when both people have at least been able to receive that opportunity, there's a catharsis that happens that then allows you to move forward from a very different point towards seeking solutions together. Because I am fully convinced in work and at home, personal and professional, 99% of all conflict is because there are two people staring at each other, sometimes shouting at each other, saying, "You're not listening to me, you don't understand." We have this inherent need to be heard and understood. And most people can't hear and understand until they first feel heard and understood. So there becomes this chicken game of, no, you listen first. No, you listen first. Well, the protocol, if both people agree to it, yes, does give one person the space first, but as long as everybody follows the steps, it guarantees that both people will have that opportunity. And if one person gets to receive all that first, okay, then they need to give back the value that they just received very generously from the other person. So it's very tit for tat that way. And it's something, honestly, Michael, that I came up with about 10 or 12 years ago when I was newly married, and my husband and I were regularly butting heads about a couple of issues. And, we're both loud and energetic people. And I tease him all the time saying, I don't think in the decade we've been married, when hanging out with his family, I don't think anyone is ever allowed to actually finish a sentence. That's just not part of the family DNA. Love them all, just not part of the conversation style. So I needed to know that I wasn't going to have to fight to get my thoughts out. And, he had his own desires as well. So I put this together one night when I knew we had to talk about something that neither one of us really wanted to address. I said, can we just try this and see how it works? Because I need this and you need that, and we need to get past this stalemate. And it's funny, we now, a decade later, we use that protocol to teach communication classes for couples, especially engaged couples as well as married couples and others. But and when he shares his experience using it, he usually leads with something along the lines of, when Laura first came to me with this quote unquote protocol for how to, have a conversation about whatever, he's like, I thought it was the stupidest thing I ever saw until it worked. And we've used it ever since. And it's, I used it for a training that I did for a law firm a couple of months ago, and maybe about 100 people were there, the partners and the associates, et cetera. And I got a LinkedIn message about 3 days later from the wife of the managing partner. And she said, I just wanted to reach out to you and tell you how much I love listening to Understand. My husband brought it home 3 days ago, and it's now we each have a copy of it on our nightstands next to our bed. It's fabulous. Thank you. What an amazing testimony. It's like, wow, we got through the lawyers. Who knew?
Yeah.
So if it can work for them and it can work for us, it can work for anybody.
Talk about a referral source right there.
Yes.
No, I appreciate you sharing that with us. Thank you so much. So you've mentioned your book, you've mentioned the training that you do. You're super gracious with sharing that protocol with us as well. For people that have listened to this and been taking notes the whole time like I've been, where can they connect with you, follow you, and continue to learn from you?
Thank you, Michael. My website is the easiest. It's very simply laurasicola.com. You can also, of course, connect on LinkedIn or other major social media platforms. LinkedIn is where I'm personally most active, but would love to hear any feedback from anyone. And of course, on the from my website, I have a weekly newsletter that goes out, and it gives tips and stories and tools and resources and lots of freebies. So I would highly encourage everyone to go to the website right at the bottom and join me for the newsletter each week.
I will make sure we share all of the links so people can get quick access to that and find out, hopefully do the same thing I did. Start clicking on links on your website and wake up a half an hour later still reading. It was so great to meet you. I really appreciate you taking the time to share all of this tremendous information with us today. I know I learned a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Michael. It's been a pleasure.
We'll talk to you soon. Thank you. Laura, thank you for a great conversation. I appreciate all of the expertise, examples, and ideas you shared with us today. I was taking notes the entire time. I hope everybody listening was taking notes as well along the way. Thank you so very much. I do want to get back to your idea of breaking the expert's curse. That's something that we don't often stop to think about, and it really, really is an important consideration. I also like how you talked about don't dumb it down. Speaking clearly doesn't mean dumbing things down for people. That's another very important idea. And also, I really loved how you talked about if you wouldn't say it, don't project it. All very important ideas. Thank you so much for all that you shared. Hope everybody else was taking notes alongside me the entire time. That was a fantastic conversation. Thank you. Thank you to everybody that was here. We really appreciate you being here week after week. Thank you for listening along. While you're here again, we'd be grateful if you could just take a moment to subscribe to the show, like the show, leave us a review and your feedback, share it with your network. We really do appreciate it. And we do love to ask, please check out our sponsors. Humantel.com. The code's Inquasive25 for 25 off the best-in-class online training for accurately interpreting when people's emotions are shifting by recognizing when their facial expressions and nonverbal communications are indicating these emotional shifts. For the professional interviewers, please head over to CertifiedInterviewer.com. Again, that's where you get all your questions answered about the International Association of Interviewers at the national level and at the local chapter level. What are all your opportunities to contribute and membership requirements? It's there, as well as all the information you need for the Certified Forensic Interviewer designation, how to apply, how to earn, and how to leverage it in your career. Finally, you can go to Inquasive.com to learn more about the programs that our clients ask us to custom facilitate for their senior leaders, sales teams, HR teams, and beyond to help them learn how to uncover hidden value in all of their high-impact conversations. Thank you again for being here with us for another episode. Stay safe, take care of each other, and we'll see you next time.